Open Tobias Harris, and Tobias drills it! Sixers up one!
Embiid fakes, Embiid down the lane!
What is going on, guys, and welcome back to the Pick Swap Media YouTube channel. My name is Sean Barnard. As always, the Sixers season is over, but it is now NBA draft season, which is debatably even more of my favorite time of the year. So I want to begin diving into some of these prospects, what to expect. Me and Ryan Cole went over some of the top guys, some names that you do need to know in our initial stream. I do want to dive a little more in-depth and specific on each of these guys, and I do want to start right at the top with Alex Sarr today. So in this video, I'm going to go a little bit into who he is as a player, what he brings to the table, as well as dive into a little bit of film to see what he looks like in a game setting. So let's get right into it. Now, there's been plenty of talk about this draft and the talent level being a little bit watered down. Now, we even got this report today saying that an anonymous NBA team member says that having the #1 pick in this year's draft is essentially like drafting Tobias Harris at #1 overall. Yeah, that's tough. That's tough. Now, before I dive any farther into this, I will say that Alex Sarr, straight up right now, I would have traded for Tobias Harris years ago. I don't think it's quite as bad as it is being made out to be. But what I will say about this draft specifically is it does feel like there's a lot more of you're finding the role players. You're finding the complementary pieces, not quite as rich in the franchise cornerstone department. And it is interesting that the Atlanta Hawks landed with the #1 pick. They have several questions beyond who to select that they need to address as a franchise. Obviously, the Trae Young, DeJounte Murray duo kind of headlining things there. But for where my money is right now, that I do think that the choice for the Hawks should be Alexander Sarr at the #1 pick. And let's dive into why I do feel that way. So to start with his stats, that he spent this year playing in the NBL over there in New Zealand. This is after 2 years that he spent with Overtime Elite, which is, of course, more by high school age, another development program that continues to grow there, and then did make his impact felt on the professional level out there in Australia here. So in his one season, he played 17.2 minutes per game, averaged 9.7 points, 4.4 rebounds, 0.9 assists per game, 1.3 blocks, shot just 29.8% from beyond the three-point arc, but did launch 2 attempts per game, and shot 52% from the field overall on 7.1 field goal attempts. So you can see some of the raw stats there. This was a bit of a situation where I think a lot of times when people take the overseas route, that there's not as clear of a pathway as I think in a lot of their heads. That when you think about like a college program, when you're playing against your age, that you have kind of the clear-cut opportunity to compete for those. When you're going against grown men, guys that have played high-level college, have either flamed out of the NBA, had a cup of coffee in the NBA, whatever the situation may be, there's a lot of real deal high-level basketball players that I think sometimes these guys are not quite prepared for. And Alex Sarr still made his impact felt. He still was a key contributor on a team that went to the semifinals over there, but he didn't quite have this body of work that I think a lot of people would like to see from a #1 pick. And this is not unique to him, that we've seen this on a lot of different situations. Now, let me pull up a little bit of film to the side here so we can dive into things. I'm going to play this on the screen as I kind of talk through a little bit of what he brings to the table. And #1, the biggest thing that we're going to see with Alex Sarr is he's going to be known for his defense, that he's athletic, measures in at 6'11" and 7.75 without shoes. So a real deal 7-footer and a guy that may not even be done growing. Weighs 217 pounds, a wingspan of over 7'4", just 19 years old. As I mentioned, he spent 2 years with Overtime Elite before going to Australia. And the #1 things that stand out in his game from a characteristic standpoint is he's an athletic defender, he's switchable, he's versatile, he's a terrific shot blocker. Again, I do believe that his calling card as a basketball player will end on that defensive side of the ball. But he's also a guy that is a grab-and-go guy, that he can pick up a rebound and take it coast to coast himself. Frankly, this is an area that I think he continue to build on, and an area that he will stack skills as his career progresses. You can see how effective he is in transition. His athleticism, the way that he moves, is really high-level stuff for a guy that is 7 feet. That he's cut a lot. He looks like a wing that happened to have grown a couple extra inches rather than a big man that moves well. But he does move truly like a wing, which we do not see for a lot of guys his size. A couple other notable stats that I found from him. 1.51 points per possession in transition. That's elite stuff. That's really high level stuff. And obviously you get your run of the mill choice when you are getting out in transition the way that he does. A lot of that being via dunks and easy layups right there. He's got some appeal as like a slasher and a driver. He's not super comfortable as a shooter. I do think there might need to be some mechanical tweaks to his game. He's not a guy that looks super comfortable with it, but that's a long-term situation. That I think the appeal and why you're drafting this guy from day one is the things that he does on the defensive side of the floor, just like that play right there. And let me run that one back a little bit. Look at the way that he has no business blocking this ball, and he still finds a way to get it done. So look at the way that they attack the paint, his verticality to block this, and it's immediately after this play. Here we go. And look at Alex Sarr getting vertical, meeting him at the rim, having no fear there, and a little bit of second effort after the play as well. That is high-level stuff that will directly translate to the NBA, and that earns you minutes on a day one basis. Look at his level of verticality here for a guy who does have the step on him in this situation. That's impressive stuff. And beyond just that, beyond the verticality, the shot blocking, what specifically is appealing to me is I do think there's a world where this guy is a 1-through-5 defender, that I do think that he can hang when switched out to guards. He does a really nice job of leveraging his wingspan, that when you do have a guard trying to beat you off the dribble, that he's aware of how much ground he can make up, and he does an excellent job switching the hips. This is a perfect example, and I'm going to rewind this play as well. This is exactly what I'm talking about here. That look at the way he switches his hips to stick with the quicker guard and just sends this shot back. That, as you can see here, and this immediately after the lob, look at the way the guard gets him on a switch on this next play. He's able to switch his hips, turn his hips twice, and still get the block here. So here we go. He switched out on the perimeter, switch once, switch twice, and does not matter. He still gets the block. That's super high level stuff. That is exactly why you would be interested in him with the first overall pick, and that's something that speaks to his potential in the long run. What that means is there's a whole lot of different versatile ways that you can use this guy, that he's not just going to be your run-of-the-mill big man. That is some stuff that you can build a defense around, both as a rim protector and a guy who cannot be exposed when he's just switched out on the perimeter. So that is particularly intriguing to me, and probably the number one thing that jumped off the page when watching him. I will say with Alex Sarr specifically, and these international guys as a whole, haven't been able to dive into as much game film as I truly would like. I did watch one full game of Alex Sarr, but all these college guys I have a little more under my belt for watching, as well as G League Ignite that I will get into, Matas Buzelis and a lot, Ron Holland, all the guys over there that I will be diving into. I did catch a couple of G League Ignite games this year, and Alex Sarr, by the way, did have a game against G League Ignite, which kind of put him on the map at the start of this year. Not that people weren't fully aware of him, but as I mentioned, I do think that there is a little bit of mechanical work to do on the offensive end. I do like the outlook, the mentality that he seemed to have, that he was a willing shooter. He was not a guy that passed up looks. He also did struggle with physicality a little bit at times. I think that also comes with making the professional leap when he did, that oftentimes, you're going against grown men. And I will point out this play right here as well. This is another intriguing play to me. That look at the read with the ball, the on the short roll, him making a decision and kicking out to the shooter. So as you can see, I'm going to freeze this right here. So setting the screen, they have the pick and roll opportunity, and look at him find the shooter on the wing for the open three-pointer. That type of decision making is another reason why he's not one of your run-of-the-mill big men. That is high-level stuff that allows you to play some five-out type of basketball, that you can put the ball in his hands. And there's guys that make a career off that. We're talking about the Draymond Greens. This is something that Nikola Jokic is particularly excellent at, that when you do put him in these type of decisions, in situations where you have to make decisions, that can make or break a player. And I like what I see from Alex Sarr in that particular realm of things. Now, as far as kind of putting a player comp on him, it's tough to tell. That he is a little bit of a unique guy. I do think, once again, that defense will be his identity as a player. I think what he brings to the table offensively will help, and there's something there in the long term. But I think it's unlikely that he's going to be one of these, 25 point per game scorers or anything like that. I think it's much more that he's cut from the mold of impacting the box score a little all over the place, finding impact on the defensive glass, blocking shots, running the fast break, having some easy assists there, being effective in transition, stuff like that I do think he will. I think there's a little bit of Evan Mobley in his game is probably the number one kind of comparison that I'll throw out there. The way that he does impact the game defensively, the way that he uses his wingspan, his long arms, and his size everywhere. And by the way, Evan Mobley's stock at an all-time high after that playoff exit, even though the team did get sent home. It did change my opinion a little bit how well he did play in that series. And I also don't think it's any coincidence that it happened without Jared Allen being there. But nonetheless, that does speak to some of his skill sets and the things that are translating I can see with Alex Sarr. I also, to be perfectly honest, I get the feeling that Alex Sarr has a little bit more bulldog mentality than I get from Evan Mobley. That Mobley is always a guy that it felt a little too smooth with. Sarr's got some physicality, that he will take it at you. He will be physical, and he still needs to add some weight to his frame. He absolutely has a frame that can put on weight, which I think is appeal. You compare that to the Victor Wembanyama's and Chet Holmgrens of the world. I don't quite see it. I do think Sarr is a guy that if he gets in the weight room and does the work, that his body will naturally fill out, which is intriguing to think about in the long term there. A couple other player comps I want to throw out here. Jonathan Isaac, I think, is pretty fitting here. And Isaac, pound for pound, may be the best defender in the NBA. I still think he gets underrated in how talented he is, how good he can at just taking a guy out of a play. If Sarr wants to fully focus on that end of the floor, I think he's capable of being that level of NBA defender. Another guy just to throw out is Bam Adebayo. I see a lot of that as well. I think Sarr will likely end up the better shooter out of Bam Adebayo and himself, but I think defensively, the way that they are capable of switching 1 through 5, the way that they do get out in transition, are comfortable putting the ball on the floor. I see a lot of that there. I don't think Sarr from day one will be a guy where he's putting the ball on the floor, where he's, initiating offense in the way that he may eventually be able to. But I think that ability to still make decent decisions with the ball in his hands is something that's noteworthy from day one. Now, a lot of these highlights are simply going to be him dunking using his physicality, and that's not going to go away at the NBA level. That as much as for sure it's a different beast, that he's still 7 feet tall, still growing, and still a freaky athlete. That he does get up there, he does block shots, he is not afraid to get vertical and very effective at it. So these are all really appealing things. So one last comp that I will throw out there from a player standpoint is Jaren Jackson Jr. I'll say a lot of that is because of the shot blocking ability there. Now, Alex Sarr is obviously his own player, that I don't want to pigeonhole him into these types of comparisons, and frankly, he's kind of a blend of all of them. But what I will say is, if you are selecting this guy, if you are looking to pick him up in the NBA draft, that what you should expect is a high-level athlete, a real deal 7-footer, a guy with legitimate transition ability, and a guy that can anchor your defense. That I do think, while he may not be the traditional building block as you think of as it pertains to a top pick, he is a guy with all the types of abilities that you should be looking for. That I do think there's a way where he can be a part of an identity of a team in the way that you should be looking for with that type of selection. So while he may not be the surefire future Hall of Famer, future All-Star that you hope for in a number 1 overall pick, I do think Alex Sarr is a worthy candidate and something that teams should consider. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. I will be diving into some more names as we get close to the draft. Going to be ripping out a couple more of these videos, but Alex Sarr for now is the guy that is number 1 on my list in this overall draft. I want to hear the same from you. So appreciate you guys once again. Make sure you are smashing that subscribe button, dropping a like, and I'll talk with you next time right here on Pixel Media.